In my turn, I'd like to welcome everyone, and I do thank you as well as other speakers for the invitation. And I just hope that whenever I utter and pronounce the name of the hosting organization, I am right at that. And I'm glad I've learned so much during the set of presentation today, and I'm also happy to present my views to you. I believe Mongolia is a country that you in this room have heard a lot about, and you know much about it. Mongolia is a small country with 3 million inhabitants. However, eventually, with the population density is about 2 per 80 million per square kilometer. It used to be 1 per square kilometer. Now we are getting denser and denser. At the same time, you may want to know that we cultivate 80 million animals, goats, sheep, and camels. At the same time, Mongolia is one of the 10 most resource-rich countries in the world. It is, what I have in mind is that Mongolia is rich in coal, it is rich in copper, in gold, uranium, iron ore, just to name the most or the best known minerals and raw material. The biggest revenue from comes from coal export, certainly copper, and number 3 on the list is gold that is being exported. At the same time, in 2019, some 40 million tons of coal was exported to China, next door. Our country is in a debt crisis. What that translates to is that some 27.4 billion US dollars is what constitutes the state debt. That's what it amounts to. Also, there is there's a growing foreign direct investment, and what is important is that the government that amounts to some, as I said, over 27 billion, and we used in Mongolia some foreign offered loans that we had to repay in a few years of time, and we were not prepared. We had no such routine or experience. However, right now, the politicians who at the time made the decisions are now named sinners. However, I would not say that. The fact remains that the decision makers of the time, those politicians, were just short of routine. So we are indebted, and we are short of independent and sovereign decisions. In 2016, we also were threatened with insolvency, and the only loan reasonably could come from next door China. Loans that also went together with political interests, and for your information, an expanded 5.5 billion US dollar financial instrument with IMF was approved, and it was certainly a finance package which we very successfully implemented. And if we look back, the growth was minus 1.2% in that year. Since the situation has normalized and the economic growth reached a total of 7.3 by 2019. However, risks are also present because the Mongolian economy in general is largely dependent on prices for raw materials, and inflation is runaway, and the exchange rate are also fluctuating and are on a constant ups and downs wave. Nevertheless, we managed to combat these difficulties, and we have now saved up reserves of 4.3 billion US, although previously we hardly had any reserves in the country. And for your information, we have a number of foreign investment present in Mongolia, and it constitutes to quite a large rate in the GDP. Mongolia is a democratic country with two large neighbors, Russia and China. Now, without Russia, ladies and gentlemen, Mongolia would not be able to maintain its economy, but it would also be useful to make mention of our foreign trade with China, which appears even more important. 65.2% of our foreign trade is carried out with China, and by the end of 2018, trade will have reached 8.4 billion. Gas pipelines will have been erected, but we are pretty cautious about this. Many researchers, including Yuri Krichkin, maintains that if Russia is to maintain its political role in Asia, then both political, cultural, and economic impact of Russia needs to be intensified in Mongolia. Russia also, for your information, runs large projects under the very same initiative of one project, one belt, one road, and Yuri Krichkin also is a political scientist. When I approach the project One Belt and One Road, you certainly have heard that it is the revival of the ancient Silk Road of the Mongolian Imperium, but this time, and traditionally so, by China. We have been very excited about this initiative, but it has become obvious that this project is an internal policy objective of the People's Republic of China, because it is also obvious that the project will have been funded intensively by the central government in China. And the project needed and does need political approval. Well, the Silk Road led through what is now Mongolia, and the project for China has been and will remain to be very significant. Well, in this project, One Belt and One Road, Mongolia will continue to participate, and the name has to do with the interweaving and connecting of energetics networks in northern and eastern Asia. Mongolia is not only rich in raw material and minerals, but also in the wind energy and solar energy. And the solar energy resource constitutes to 1,200 gigawatt and 200 gigawatt of wind energy. So the above two categories will also continue to need funding to the amount of 9.8 billion should be found if ever we find and identify the appropriate loan sources. The Chinese government and companies are ready and willing to invest in Mongolia or in the homes of Mongolian citizens, and we receive a number of offers when it comes to the development of infrastructure, because that has utmost importance. But certainly the People's Republic wants to invest in mines in the Mongolian infrastructure, open field mining, processing, manufacturing units are in the target or in a focus of attention as viewed from China. Well, obviously, we are underfunded in Mongolia, and the Mongolian lenders only make available a maximum of 60 million with annual interest rates of 50 to 20%, which is quite a burden on businesses. And therefore, the Bank of China needs a license for their establishment and lending in RMB. Chinese agriculture is equally important from this particular aspect. Fighting poverty is a priority. Network of supply, especially in the agriculture sector, is another priority, but that requires carrying out structural changes. Mongolia has vast experience in livestock and in agriculture in general. So that offers another domain for cooperation with China. China has invested as many as 23 projects worth of 2.3 billion, and certain further projects have to be viewed at with more precautiousness, because there are financial limitations, especially in areas where Mongolian companies are or remain indebted. That includes mining, agriculture, and infrastructure. But nevertheless, no matter the difficulties, we have managed to sign bilateral agreements in these areas as well. Now, certain new pieces of legislation were passed because of the limitations, or as a result of limitations. which will set limits to Chinese foreign investment. But I'd like to mention the internal policy issues. Raw material nationalism is a phenomenon that is pretty well known in China, in Mongolia. I'm sorry, many Mongolian citizens give it a kind of a raw material nationalistic approach, and they are fearful that because of the vast Chinese population of 1.3 billion, whereas we only are 3 million, so there are fears that not only is it that Chinese will invest, but the resources will be very likely utilized with infringing and breaking some Mongolian laws. Chinese mining companies violate rights of, among other, female workers. The work conditions and salaries are very often compared with working conditions and pay Rio Tinto's largest mining company. In general, the Chinese employers do not enjoy a good reputation, and the economic damage caused by Chinese investors compose a long list. Nevertheless, Mongolia's economic dependence on China is huge. Like some of the statistics show, foreign trade, as I mentioned before, 65.2% goes to China. Almost 100%, notably 92.8% of exports go to China, and 35.5% of imports is implemented. A bit less than that, 34 or so % of our imports come from China. Mongolia is a landlocked country without access to the sea, and exporting to other countries is only possible if we utilize transport routes via China. In addition to commodities, we export of agricultural products like meat, wool. We are intensifying our exports to China because China's growing middle class and welfare does require that cashmere wool and agricultural products. The perspectives are pretty good, although some foreign trading companies' exports are negative when compared to China. This brings me to the conclusion. Thank you for interpreting and your attention. Thank you for the floor.